Good morning, everybody. This is the Podman Community Cabal meeting. This is August 19th, 2021. This is the meeting that we have every third Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern Time to deep dive into designs and ideas for what's coming up in Podman. Not so much demoing things, but rather to just talk about the project as a whole and if there are any problems or areas of concern, and we're open for questions as well. So we have an agenda for today, which is out on HackMD. Nolan's gone ahead and posted it for us. If you could please add your name up top, I will add an attendees list there. I'll try to add folks as well, but if you could add your own, that'd be great. And our two topics for today are Podman on Windows and Podman v4o inclusions. Dan, can I send you the, have you start us up on the Podman on Windows?
Yeah, we don't have Brent here.
Oh, okay. Well then, Matt, are you ready to go for the 4o inclusions? And I'll see if I can drag in Brent.
Sure. So this is going to be, well, actually, I have no idea how long this is going to take, but I will just briefly describe what's going to happen, and then people comment if they want to. So, some people may have noticed, but we bumped Podman main development version from 3.4 up to 4.0 recently. So we are now targeting a 4.0 release in the somewhat near future. We don't have a real time frame yet, but we are looking to get into a place where we can make some breaking changes again, mostly related to networking. Paul has a very large pull request out right now to begin what we're calling the network rework. We're going to be reworking Podman's network stack to better, basically we want to better support what Docker already supports to set ourselves up for the future to be able to support more things, and especially we want to open up IPv6 support. Our IPv6 support is presently miserable, and we recognize that. Also, we'd like to make a stack that's a lot easier for us to debug. So this is probably the headlining feature of 4.0, but we are at a place where we are making a major version bump. So we are in a place where we can make breaking changes. So that is something worth discussing. Are there any breaking changes to Podman that we should consider? And there's also probably going to be a 3.4, but that's a separate topic. We're still working out time frames on this. It seems unlikely that 4.0 is going to arrive before the new year. We will probably have one small version with some bug fixes between here and there. But yeah, are there any ideas from the community for breaking changes that we should make to improve Podman?
I think there's breaking changes for the API, mainly cleaned up things that we sort of screwed up when we first wrote the API. So, like delete one container and it comes back as a list of containers, things like that. So there could be API breakage. We're also switching to Journal D for default for events and for logging. Although I think that's already happened in the code base, although we're shipping the defaults the reverse. Reason for switching to Journal D is that we don't, right now, we don't handle any type of rotation on events, which means that if you have a container running for months and months without rebooting, then you're going to end up taking up a lot of space in /run. Similarly, if for logging, we have very rudimentary rotation of logs. And so switching to Journal D basically puts the onus on System D and Journal D to handle rotation of logs. And we don't need to be responsible for it. So those are a couple of changes that we'll be announcing as 4.0 features. Obviously, you can do that yourself now if you want. Anybody else think of any other 4.0 things that we're going to be changing?
Yeah, the API is the big one that is not the network rewrite. We have a goal to look over API endpoints and see which ones of them don't make sense, because some of them have evolved since we originally wrote it. Some of them we just didn't have a good idea of what it should look like. So we are looking to change some things that return, say, an array, but the array is guaranteed to only be of size 1. That should only return one thing. So we're going to make some small breaking changes to the API there. Between that and the network rewrite, I think that's the majority of our breaking changes. We prefer not to make too many.
Brent, you went off. Brent, you went off mic and off mute, and you're making a lot of noise.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it doesn't seem
Anybody
like
else? Any other comments on 4.0?
Yeah,
One
I'm
of the things
I'm looking at my notes here, Dan, and so just give me a second to get back to them.
Okay.
I think for 4.0, you'll see us doing more performance examination and trying to reduce memory consumption as well as binary size. Did you mention that?
Nope. I think there's also going to be, we're slowly adopting more build kit functionality into Podman build through Builder. So some of those people report them as, I don't know, bugs and feature requests, but they're slowly coming into Build is adding some of the nicer features of build kit to it.
We've got a couple that we got done before 4.0 because they're not breaking changes, I don't believe. They'll be in whatever comes after 3.3. And that is the enhancements to PlayCube. The build with PlayCube merged yesterday. There's one question mark that we want to review with you, Dan, when you get back. Yeah. And then the teardown of a PlayCube is, I'm just writing tests. You talked about the log driver. You talked about the log driver, right?
Yes.
Okay.
One other feature that we'll probably start to push is, Giuseppe, you want to talk a little bit about your ZSDD stuff that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm working on supporting partial pools. Like I'm working on a new format that permits to, when doing a pool, to retrieve just the files that are not already present in the storage. Yeah, the feature is already present in container storage, so it's already possible to use it with Podman right now. One issue, though, is that this new format requires support also from the registry, and at the moment, the standard works fine just on Docker app. I'm also looking into supporting the star.gzip format, so without requiring a different compression format for the same feature.
But Giuseppe, right now, I can't build one of these images with Podman build, correct?
Yeah, you can build it.
So there is a recipe to build it with?
Yeah, it's on the GitHub pull request. There is the. There is some.
It hasn't been merged into Podman build yet.
Yeah, it is. It's already merged.
Oh, it was merged. Okay.
Yeah.
So the problem
well,
with
the easiest is
yeah. Go ahead.
the easiest is to use just copy to copy the image and convert it to the new format. Yeah.
But I can't just do a Podman right now. I can do a Podman build and a Podman push to get it in the new format.
It should work. Well, I mean the Podman build works in the same way. At Podman push format time, we need to specify the format and the compression. So it should work straight from Podman or build.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one problem with there's two different ZSTD formats. One problem with one of the formats is it's not Docker compatible. So you can push an OCI image that can be used with all of the tooling, including Containerd, Cryo, every engine except for older versions of Docker. So that's one of the reasons we haven't been pushing this, but it should help increase speeds of pulls quite a bit.
Yeah, that's why I'm looking right now in a compatible way to do it with gzip until then we can switch to say standard.
All right. Anything else? All right. Let's go to Tom. Let's go to
To
1.0.
Brent. Yeah, the Windows for Podman. Brent, Dan had thought you'd want to talk about this? What we wanted to do? Oh, now you're on.
It looks like it looks like I lost connection, so I can't see anything, but I'll stay on here.
Yeah, we're not sharing anything.
So
okay, I'm back. What was it? I'm
so
sorry.
so we just want to. So right now we don't have a current solution for Podman on Windows is just to use WSL2 and find a distribution that works with it, right? Versus what we're building for the Mac now. So the question is, do we get Podman Machine to work for Windows, or do we go some other route?
Okay, Pavel, it looks like you have a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I'm running Podman on Windows via WSL already a few months, and everything looks very smooth. It's very convenient. The solution is very simple. Actually, I use Fedora 34 image from the Windows Store, managed by Whitewater, systemd JD from Arcade System, which provides full systemd support, and Podman. So everything very simple. It's great, simply great, because I don't need a separate client, nothing. So it's per Podman. Sometimes it's even more convenient than Podman on the workstation, because for rootless users, I can use Windows Terminal, open several windows in Windows Terminal, and roam between rootless users and keep root user Windows aside. So actually, for me, it works.
Excellent. Eric, go ahead.
Oh, you in the subsystem, you also have the systemd working. Did I understand this correctly?
With
I haven't
WSL.
tried it with systemd there, but otherwise I also use it on Windows, and for me it also works fine. for all Podman related stuff.
What do you guys? I think one of the questions we had that we simply don't know the answer to is: do folks think that installing WSL is too high of a hurdle for people?
No, you don't need to install. WSL is installed by default at Windows. It's enabled at Windows already 1 year from 20H1 release. It's installed and enabled by default. So the only thing what I did install Fedora 34 distro from Microsoft Store and install Arcade system JD to have system D. That's all.
Does anyone know? Do all versions of Windows have? Can they all run WSL, or is it only certain versions?
Well, before we go that, Cabal, is it WSL 2 that was on by default for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2. Okay. Yeah, as far as I know, from my limited experience, the WSL 2 isn't on everything and anything, for the home servers, but you can go ahead and install it easily. But I think some of the newer, I have an older machine there, it wasn't quite there, but it installed easily for me. I think the new machines that are coming out now have it installed directly.
Has anybody played with Docker Machine for Windows? And is there any features that they have that we should add to make that work as well on Podman, or is WSL2 good enough?
But they do have a fancy GUI interface, but I'm not sure that's something we wanted to worry about right off the bat.
Yeah, they also have a way. Don't they have a way to control, turn it off, turn off the VM, turn on the VM in their GUI? Is that correct, Guy?
Yeah, I made some automation. So I create simply a shortcut on desktop that starts Fedora distro at JD. And at that point, I have running Windows, running Linux with System D, and I loaded using WT as a rootless user, and it executes full loaded sequence via System D. Everything works.
So what Docker Desktop does is they set up their own distribution, and then after they install what is needed in others' distribution to talk to this Docker D, this isolated distribution. And then they also add what is needed on the host for using Docker in a PowerShell, so that it talks over an M pipe and goes to the WSL distro. In the UI, they have a checkbox where you say you can make Docker reachable from those distributions. But yes, they run the full thing isolated from your distribution.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does with WSL2 in Windows, my assumption is that if you were to port map a container, that you would not be able to reach it outside of Windows. Is that correct?
Of course, yeah, of course.
All right. So we're missing that one thing.
Yeah, they do something magic with VPN-Kit to make it happen. It's a little bit complicated. I don't know all the details. They use a bridge to do that. So they run a process in the distribution that talks to something on the host, and it listens on the host and sends to the VM and back and forth. A hack for sure.
Okay.
So I think Pavel and Eric talked about there is a Fedora version, but it's maintained by some third-party person, right? It's not.
And I think it costs a little bit of money. Is that true?
Pavel,
We can't hear you at the moment. Pavel, you're mute.
It costs total $10 for a Fedora 34 distro from Microsoft Store. Totally, because WSL currently is enabled by default even on Home OEM edition. So everywhere.
Okay. Okay.
Is
And
Ubuntu still free?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
And for a fairly weak user, how hard is it to set this up? Is this something we could just document how to do, or is this you have to be an experienced WSL user to pick out a different distribution?
So if I understand Pavel correctly, it got easier now. There was a time where you needed to install some libraries underneath, but now it seems to be just the click in the web store. So it's like installing an app on your phone.
Yeah, it should be pretty straightforward from what I'm hearing from Pavel. Even I could do it.
But is this something that we should put, at podman.io? You want to run this on Windows? Click this URL, and then it starts leading you through the process of getting this up and running.
I'd be happy to write a first user experience from it, since I haven't done it myself, and find out where the bugs and issues are. If people could review it for me, that'd be great.
Yeah, although I hesitate to. I don't want to have a cookbook. This is how you prepare it. I would rather have something that you could just click. And I mean, the thing is, I guess we would want to have the preferred distribution. I mean, that's where I always get stuck with this. I wish Red Hat and Microsoft are still fighting over indemnity rules, and that's why Red Hat doesn't have any repos available in WSL. So there's no CentOS and there's no Fedora. And the problem is, it's hard for me to say, go to this guy and give him $10 and then you got it. Right.
Yeah. And I understand that part.
And
I'm
also,
not sure.
Also, Dan, I believe, regardless of the distribution you pick today, if Podman is not installed by default, which I don't believe it is, you do have to issue some sort of package manager command to get it there.
I gotta do apt install Podman or yum install Podman on this.
Yeah, right. We can't completely abstract it. What Pavel eventually set up is completely abstracted. In other words, you don't need to know anything about WSL after you've gotten it set up. But I think to get to his point, you need to know something today.
I mean, in a perfect world, we'd have a Podman distribution that would just, we would just say, click this button, and all of a sudden the Podman distribution would get installed on top of WSL. And Podman, Paul configured, ready to run, and the next thing you do is you run a Podman run command, and it works. That to me is a seamless installation, as opposed to.
I agree.
Maybe we can sell it on the store for $9.
I'm actually working on one right now that I'm selling for 20.
But the key component of the stack is systemd Jenny. It's free of charge too, but you have to install it as a part of distribution or separately.
Right, but I think if we had a Podman distribution based on, say, Fedora 34, with systemd already installed and and Podman already installed. To me, that's the experience we want to get to, right? Not.
And if there's a guy already preparing a Fedora for this, then it shouldn't be too hard, right? We just need to get the input from him. Then we do the package installation of Podman. We rename whatever config file, and then we also upload it to Microsoft.
Yeah. But are we basically stealing his $10 then?
Maybe we need to pay him $10 then, so maybe we also need to make it for $10.
Yeah, or he upcharges it to $11 for the Podman variant.
But
It's a
Dan,
VIP version.
Dan, are you reading your email on PTO?
We can legally do
I'm a little bit behind, but yeah.
Okay.
we can legally do a respin of Fedora and not charge $10 without needing to provide indemnification. That is another option.
Yeah.
So who is we?
Oh, that's the problem, right?
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
the exact problem. Who's we?
Because we shouldn't be
Probably,
anyone on this call other than you.
Yeah.
Well,
I was trying to do the royal we.
Community people can do it, but
Yes.
I mean, the problem, all of us don't want to get into the operating system business. So it's more of because obviously this thing has to get updated, has to get security updates. We have to figure out how do you update this. I don't know if Microsoft takes care of updating the operating system automatically. It's what the worst case is we end up with a Podman on Fedora 34 and it's Fedora 38 and this thing's still running on Fedora 34 and nobody's ever updating. It's full of
That'd be up to us.
security.
Microsoft won't touch that at all.
Right.
It's like putting up an app on the Apple iStore, Apple Store, wherever.
Right.
They let you put stuff there and they charge you for doing so, and then you get money back somehow if you want to.
All right. This is a case if we could get Fedora to handle this, then.
Right.
That'd be a bonus.
Check your email.
Yes. Okay. Oh no, I know what you're talking about, Brent. But yeah.
Okay. I'd like to pivot this conversation a little bit if folks don't mind, because I think we got the information we need on WSL. But I would ask just a secondary question, because Dan and the rest of the team and I are trying to figure out how we get the Podman machine function working. And we're trying to figure out how, if we had a distribution, let's say like a Fedora CoreOS running, a micro one running in there, and a security update for it came out, or just the general topic of how do I update that VM that's sitting under there? What do folks think that experience should be like?
at the moment, the distro, the kernel, Linux kernel, currently Microsoft allows to use custom kernel, so everybody can take, modify, and compile the kernel by himself and distribute it separately or as part of Fedora distro. As usual, the current Microsoft kernel supports Fuse, everything that needed for Podman.
So Pavel, I'm not very familiar with WSL, but I will say I've been chatting with the product manager at Microsoft, and he actually said that they don't have a way to provide a custom kernel. So if you have some kind of docs on that, I'd love to see it. If you happen to see a way that you can actually do a custom kernel with WSL too.
No, I never did it. I never tried to build kernels by myself. So, sorry.
Yeah. But what Brian was talking about though is, say a new version, say Podman 3.3 ships, and I'm running WSL and I get Podman 3.1 on it.
Right.
How do I update that other than doing yum update or Fedora 35 comes out? How does the user go through and upgrade the operating system to the next version?
What would you like to see?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want? I'll give an example. Do you want if we had a little GUI something up in the corner that allowed you to start and stop would you want a little, hey, your VM needs an update, click here?
Aren't most store transactions from Microsoft just part of the Windows update? Don't they have some mechanism to tell Windows Update that, hey, I'm updating myself, please update on the next update process that you go through? Couldn't we tie it into that?
I'm not familiar enough.
Actually, Microsoft offers currently 2 passes for update. First pass is total update of Windows version that updates kernel. It installs new version of kernel. And second pass is WSL update And second configuration WSL config file that can point to customer kernel, so it can be delivered separately. So there are 2 options.
But that doesn't answer the update. That doesn't answer the UI. And again, in my mind, our target is not Eric and Pavel with this.
No.
My target is general person who barely doesn't even understand there's a VM, or barely understands there's a VM. What is his user process for upgrading this machine?
Currently,
and I think that's where I would figure Docker machine is much better at this than we are.
What do they do, Guy? For updates?
Sorry, for what?
What does Docker do to signal the user? How does Docker update its VM if they, for example, have an update that they need to push?
So they store a small JSON file on the internet on S3 that your Docker desktop application pulls every day. If it detects an update, it asks the user to download and install it. And when you install it, it swaps the distribution, the isolated distribution, by the new one. It just keeps the data directory. I think, if I recall correctly, I think there is one distribution which holds Dockerd basics things, and there is maybe a second distribution for your varlib Docker, your containers. And so they just swapped one thing, the Dockerd thing, and it starts again.
Does the user have to say okay, or is it automatic?
I think the user have to say okay, yeah.
Yeah, I ran into that the other day, actually.
But anyways, the GUI basically comes up and says, you might want to upgrade your machine.
Yeah, I think it comes up and says version X is now available. Do you want to update? Okay or no?
Right, but is that just when Docker releases a new version, or they're managing an entire operating system at that point, right?
Yeah, it's just for Docker.
Yes, they don't touch your WSL2 current distribution. They are their own, so basically they don't interfere with your work.
Yeah, you're breaking it up a little, but did you say that they don't care about the WSL, they're just updating the Docker version?
Yes, they have their separated fig so it does not interfere with the user's work, so that's fine for them.
Right, but you're saying that they're downloading the update in a separate VM, and then they swap one VM to the other VM, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm saying, if there's an update to systemd, or there's an update to, I don't know, SSH daemon, whatever, on the client, how does Docker do anything about that? Or do they just ignore that fact? In other words, should we only care about Podman being updated, or should we care about the entire operating system being updated?
So they ship a full distribution, so if there is a CVE inside, they have to ship the full Docker desktop application.
Okay.
And I mean, for the older Docker machine and Podman machine, it was the same thing. You would download a new ISO, and then next VM you create, it will swap the live ISO with the new version. So there was no prompt for running VMs. It was only when updating or creating new ones.
Yeah. And what happened to your storage at that point? Would it get wiped out, or was it somehow?
It would only swap the live CD that you boot from. Your disk will be intact. So your var partition will be kept, and the other one will be.
Okay.
You will get a new temp.fs with the software installation.
But your slash var live Docker would be maintained.
Yeah, it would be on the disk image. And that is kept on your host disk in your user folder somewhere.
Okay. So one other question, I guess, on Windows. Again, I'm incredibly ignorant on Windows, but does it volume mounts? So I can volume mount a Windows disk, Windows directory into a container, right? And it just works. Is that true?
Yeah, it just works. But yeah, it's not. I think it's better in terms of performance. It's better to stay with the WSL2 Linux volume, but you can still share things with your host. I think the best thing to do is to git clone in your WSL2 and access your files with your editor as they are from the Linux thing, so that it compiles fast, but you can still edit and save from time to time from your Windows. But it works out of the box, yeah. That's a good thing compared to Mac.
Yeah. Very nice. And is that a feature of WSL2, or is that a feature? I guess it's a feature of WSL2 then, right?
Yes.
Yeah, they put all your drives are mounted under mount, like mount C, mount D, mount E. So all the drive letters are mounted in.
All right. Well, we got some things to think about, and I think, Tom, if you did go through the process of documenting, that would be helpful. But
yeah,
to me, that's not the end goal. The end goal is to get something better than just documenting a way to do it now.
Yeah, I think, what I could do with the blog post is, hey, here's where it is now, and here's where we want to get it to. But if you want to go ahead and use it now, here you go.
There's a how-to from me out there, Tom, but it's old enough that it includes the old steps that you had to go and you had to go and download things for Windows first and activate the features. So, but everything after that should remain usable if you want to consult that after you write yours or whatever.
Okay.
And then we should replace it.
Yeah, we could have a link at the top of the other one to point to the new one or something, or even redirect.
Yeah, Brent, if you could send me a link to that post at some point in time, that'd be great.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, anything else about Windows? Brent or Dan or anybody else for that matter? Just kind of hop into the open discussion or ask if there are questions for anything else.
I guess the question I would have is when is Podman 3.3 going to be released?
Monday, assuming nothing else goes wrong. which fingers are all crossed here. We've had some issues with this one.
Have we got feedback from
Have we
Toolbox
heard-
and CoreOS?
Yeah, right.
I defer CoreOS to Brent. He's usually the one that handles that. I can do it if you don't want to, but I have no idea.
No, I'll do it today. I'll go grab the RPM and throw it in their test CI.
Toolbox, I have not heard from yet. I'll send them another email.
Okay, and is Ed given his blessing?
He has not. It seems to be passing gaming tests at least. I'm pretty sure.
Who I have not seen RC3.
The changes between 2 and 3 are extremely minor, but all right. I'm anticipating we're going to have one final round of backports of bug fixes before the final. So final is going to be a slight bit different, but not that different.
Yeah, for whatever it's worth, Matt, I'm doing the vendor dance right now. I've got Builda and Scopio dancing at this very moment, and then I'm hoping to get Builda and other containers projects into Podman this afternoon. So hopefully at that point in time, I'm hoping that sometime tomorrow, Friday, that you can go ahead and start cutting the release, and then it'll be ready for Monday for QE.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm expecting we're going to do a 3.4, but it's going to be a very small release compared to 3.3.
Yeah.
I'm expecting it's going to be a few features that have landed since 3.3, and other than that, mostly just bug fixes. And that is intended to tide us over while we get 4.0 built and ready.
So Dan, that's something we talked about this week. I think in the water cooler. Were you privy to that?
No, but I agree with that.
So we would say 3.4 is sometime late fall.
Yep. So
Okay.
One of the things for 4.0 to think about is theoretically, if we ship a Fedora 35 without it, then we can't break Fedora 35. So 4.0 would have to line up with Fedora 36.
Is 36 the release that usually drops in February-ish?
No, it's May. It's April.
36 is around, April, May timeframe.
It's usually April, October, sort of.
Yeah. Usually
Well,
May
that gives
1st,
us a few
October.
months where we're not going to have the latest in Fedora, which is inconvenient, but not the worst thing in the world. If Lakesh were here, he would be very
we shouldn't,
unhappy
if it's a
because
breaking change.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct, Dan.
I mean, the thing that sucks is Fedora 35 people are going to be very upset that they can't get 4.0 if it has features that they want. But breaking changes, theoretically, we shouldn't break a ongoing distribution.
Dan, one thing Matt didn't mention in his explanation that we wanted to do was essentially 2 weeks after 3.3 goes out, we'll branch 3.4, and then main branch will become V4. Okay. That's why he was saying it would just be mostly fixes, because otherwise backporting features would be a bigger deal.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, Go ahead, John.
I was just asking if there are any other questions, comments, suggestions, people want to make any other announcements?
I can go back to vacation.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking of. At least the Red Hat folks were bouncing meeting to meeting to meeting, so a little 10-minute break in between would not be an unwelcomed thing.
I'll take it.
Yeah, me as well. So just before we head out real quick, I would just like to thank everybody for attending today. And our next Cabal meeting is Thursday, September 16th, same time, 10 a.m. And our next community meeting is Tuesday, September 7th, if I recall the date correctly. And that one's at 11 a.m. and hope to see a bunch of you there. Thanks for attending all.